Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. There have been times where somebody may have said to you, "You're not being real. Just be real." And potentially you're not, or at least in your mind, you may not be, or maybe you think you are. But we're going to talk about imposter syndrome today and how it affects people in leadership roles, how it affects people in many different, even relationships. People may not be who they think they are or they want to be. Big challenge there with a lot of us when it comes to imposter syndrome. He works with many on this all the time. He's got a great team that fosters leadership and training and coaching. Saterman Connect is his company out of New York City. Josh Saterman is the founder and CEO. He's back with us. How you doing today?
Good. How are you, Steve?
I am good. And you are one of those people who are real. Like you are, what you see is what you get. You are truly genuine. But would you say back in the day when you were kind of figuring this all out, did you suffer from imposter syndrome?
No, I'm perfect. I have no confidence issues. Oh gosh, that would be lying. I'm not a liar. I'm a truth teller. Absolutely. Imposter syndrome. Gosh, how many times as a coach do I hear that? And what we talk about in our coaching is we talk about this idea of felt need versus true development need, true growth need. And so I start there because a lot of folks will get on a call and say, God, I don't feel like I'm ready, or I don't feel like I'm cut out for it. I don't feel like. So lots of layers to this conversation.
Hmm. Which layer do we peel back first?
What a good coaching question. Well, the first place I'd start is this understanding of confidence. You know, humans,
Hmm.
I've shared in prior podcasts. I like analytics, but I'm consistent with my analytics. I don't like to jump around. I like to stay focused on what something means. Humans, again, we think about fight, flight, fright. We're human. So roughly 60 to 70% of our thoughts each day are negative, 75% at the max. We talked in a prior podcast about this whole idea of sage and saboteur. It applies here too, right? So as we talk about positive intelligence, we talk about emotional intelligence, part of what we're talking about is this idea of confidence. When I walk into the room and someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, imposter syndrome. When I'm leading a staff meeting and it doesn't go so well, imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
When I'm sitting in a room and there are answers to questions and I don't have those answers yet, imposter syndrome, right? And and what I would offer instead is, well, what are you bringing? How do you get that brain thinking about why did I get this job? So oftentimes I have to remind people, you're not interviewing. You got the job already. You're in the role. Now, what do you want to make of it? Now, what's your game plan? So when somebody comes to me and starts with imposter syndrome, the first part I ask is where is your confidence or where is your lack of confidence coming from? What's giving you pause? What's
Hmm.
giving you gas, jet fuel to drive you forward? So I'll use in my coaching where are their anchors and where is their jet fuel? And I do this because at the end of the day, we can start to then talk about, well, what are the tools in your toolbox that you can use? And what do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? How do you stake that claim? So I'm going to pause there for a second because I could talk about staking that claim of I am going to learn X shortly. But as I share that with you, Steve, what comes to mind? You always have such great insight. So as I share with you confidence as a replacement for the word imposter syndrome, what comes to mind for you?
You said what I was thinking. If you were hired for a reason. Remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us
Mm-hmm.
forget it. There were other candidates. They picked you. And although you may be lacking some confidence, you're in that role for a reason. So when it comes to not knowing the answer, I've often heard, I don't do sales, but I mean, it's a piece of what I do in some regards, but that's just not my forte. But I've often heard, if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't have the answer. Let me get back to you on that. And it's
That's right.
perfectly okay. It's normal. You're being real, as
That's
opposed
right.
to freezing up like, I'm an imposter. I don't have the answer. I should have the answer. No, maybe you shouldn't. It's okay.
That's
It's
right.
just be real about it. And if you are genuine, people forget about it, move on. And then you can follow up with an email or a conversation. Hey, remember you were asking about, so I wanted to get some clarity on that. And here's the poop answer. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But imposter syndrome goes even deeper. Yeah, I feel it's in relationships. There can be even, partnerships, romantic, whatever, that people aren't really being themselves because they're not sure what they want. It could be hold all different reasons.
You're spot on. I mean, again, it comes back down to I replace it with the word confidence, not because it's
Mm,
just based on self-esteem or what I call learned or lived experience, not my coined term, but what I use, right? But we have these learned and lived experiences. What happens if you had a boss in your prior career and you said, you know what, I don't know, I'll get back to you, and they said that's unacceptable? That's going to live with you. It takes 5 to 7 positive experiences, according to Harvard Business Review, 5 to 7 positive experiences to offset one negative experience. And so here
mm,
you are, and some boss says, an asshole boss nonetheless, but don't let that shitty leadership get in your way, right? I mean, at the
right.
end of the day, if someone says unacceptable, you can't as a leader go in and say, I don't know the answer every question, but every once in a while, that's a fair assessment, right? Like, I'm not really sure yet. Let me get back to you in 24 hours. I need 48 hours for the meeting with my team tomorrow. When do you need this answer by? Right? I think we can have truth talk, and those leaders that understand that there's a lot on your plate as a manager, as a leader, as an individual contributor will be respectful of that. What tools do you need? How can I support you? What information are you missing? What's your gut tell you? Right? You can ask a lot of questions as a leader to also support imposter syndrome. So let's not just focus on the person that's experiencing the imposter syndrome. Let's also focus on, as an effective leader, what are you doing to create a safe space to minimize imposter syndrome? So it goes both
Mm,
ways. What you were saying is so true. It goes so deep. Same thing for spouses, loved ones, communities, right? Hey, what's on your mind? Some people need to speak to think. Some people need to think to speak.
speak. Yes, it's so true. That is amazing what you just said. It really is
Thank
because
you.
we're wired differently. And I'm more of a let me think before I speak. And if
That's right.
that individual said to me, that's unacceptable right away,
Shut
maybe,
down.
maybe back in the day, I would, in my mind, now I'd be like, who are you? Like, this is not fitting me.
That's
And
right.
I probably would take a deep breath and reply with something like, I would like to give you a clear, detailed answer full of facts and data. I'm going to pull them and be in touch with you. Give me an
Yeah.
appropriate time you want me to reach back and
Yeah.
just walk away. But that person, not a good person.
Well, again, Steve, you and I have experienced. We're no longer in our 20s, maybe in our 30s, but no longer in our 20s.
Give or
So that's why
take.
I talk about learned and lived experience. By the way, my hair is fantastic today. For any of you who are watching, I'm in Florida, and this is a side note. I mean, this is a business podcast, but ooh, it's a rough hair day. But as a side note to imposter syndrome, right? No, in all seriousness, right? I think what you just brought up is experience. You talk about the practice of, I think I would have paused. I think I would have reflected, and in those 4 seconds, your brain is processing exponentially faster than your mouth can speak the words.
Yep.
So you came up with a line that was about self-respect, self-awareness, boundaries, guardrails. I could use different language to describe what you did. Oftentimes when people say impossible, I say describe it. Use lots of words. Get wordy. Even if you have to think for a minute, I'll get quiet. Give them 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Come up with all the words to describe. And the reason for that is you put a bit more color to it. You start to frame out that picture. And I come back to, okay, let's talk about a time where you've experienced imposter syndrome and you've overcome it. Let's talk about how your mindset has shifted, right? Is
Mm,
this about you? Is this about them? And there's oftentimes it's a combination of both. Oftentimes it's a combination of the environments you've been quote unquote raised in. I don't mean it just from a a primary example, meaning under 18,
Yep, yep.
right? It doesn't matter if you've gone to school or not, gone to university or not, have an advanced degree. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are in your career, you could be a mechanic and you have gone to vocational school and you had a shitty boss. You could be a corporate lawyer and had an amazing boss. Right? You don't know where your learned and lived experience comes from. That being said, right? It's so important to step into leadership with authenticity. Don't repeat the sins of the past, but rather learn from them and change your leadership style. That's why when we crafted Drive, Thrive, right? So if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, try to use some words to describe it other than I feel off, I feel less than. Well, why? Why are you feeling less than? Now, let's go the other direction, Steve. If you are watching somebody again that's experiencing it, what are you doing as a leader to create a safe space to talk about it?
Mm.
So oftentimes, we've done this a little bit in our prior podcasts. Oftentimes, we will talk about this idea of the toolbox. What tools do you have that are really sharp that you can use to navigate maybe a new role or a new moment or a new project, something that's giving you that feeling of imposter syndrome? What tools do you have that are dull, right? What do you need to sharpen? And what are the tools you don't possess that you need? And in that way, you start to fill into your growth plan. So oftentimes when you're asking the question, am I really cut out for this? What we're really asking is, what are the tools I need to be successful? And if we repivot that language to looking up versus looking down, instead of the deficit of, am I cut out for this? If we look out and we look up and we say, what tools do I need to be successful? Now we can turn that dimmer switch from dark to bright and we can start to advance in moving past imposter syndrome.
When you feel that lack of confidence in a situation, or maybe overall, maybe you took on a new job, is that lack of confidence real? Are you really lacking something, or it's in your mind and it's based on a past experience, whether it was in your childhood, like you said, primal, or maybe a situation with another boss or job?
Yes, it's all part of you. Yes. Yes.
Mm.
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint. It's a great question. It's a really thoughtful question, Steve.
Thanks.
I think like many conversations, um, to be fair, I think many conversations start at the kitchen table and not the conference table. So let me say that for the audience again, so you hear what I just said. I think many conversations happen at the kitchen table before they happen at the conference table. Think about its most basic. I mean, I love the sign, everything you need to learn, you learned in kindergarten. There's some truth to it,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like you could, as an adult, say the word grace. Well, in its simplest language, grace is please, thank you, and you're welcome. It's manners, right? It's treating people with respect. It's treating people the way that you wish to be treated. So if somebody feels stumped and somebody is looking like, again, that oh shit moment of like, my boss just asked me a question, I don't have the answer, talk about it. This goes back to, I keep trying to go back to the source, not because I want to repeat myself, but because I want people on this podcast to hear these words and actually build their confidence to say, I don't know the answer. How have you found that previously? Educate me, right? I have resources. Can I run them by you? Can I share these resources? And a good leader, a good boss will take that thoughtful pause to be like, yeah,
Mm.
let's work through it together. Now, again, I hear this back. Well, what happens if it keeps happening? Well, then you have to talk about your employees' capabilities and capacities. You have to talk
Yeah,
about what are the roadblocks. Ryan Holiday wrote one of my favorite books, The Obstacle is the Way. So there is a difference between skill and will, or capacity and capability,
agreed.
but we're not there yet. And I say the word but, I use the word yes and often, right? But we're not there yet, right? We're not at that place of negative. Remember, hold space for what's possible, right? Versus what's not possible. So we're not at that place yet. We're at the place right now where we're solving for, am I really cut out for this? And what's your role as a leader or a manager? What's your role as the direct report or the new leader or the new manager or the new role you're playing? And then how do you work together symbiotically to build tools in that toolbox?
I like what you said about the kitchen table and not the conference table. It's almost as if you're being masked down and you're working on it together with your superior. And completely agree. If this shows up very often, then you might have some bigger challenges
Yeah,
in terms of your skills and such. But I think many times it's those one-offs. And
yeah.
I betcha deep in your mind when these situations present, you know the answer. It's in you. You can't verbalize it, or you're the deer in the headlights at the moment. You want to present it in the best light, but I didn't expect them to ask me that, and I know the answer, but I got to put it all together. But I'm not ready to put it all together, and I need a moment. And sometimes the moment needs to be maybe it's 24 hours where you say, "Let me get back to you on that." Um, when this presents itself, how can you start shifting your mindset? Or is it a product of you need to become a leader of yourself and own it, where if you don't have the answer, step up to the plate as opposed to running to the dugout. I'm not ready. Throw somebody else in.
I'm actually going to answer that question, Steve, with a story, and it will take me a little bit of time. So I hope the audience really listens to the full story.
Sure.
I don't talk about this often, actually. You asked at the beginning of the conversation to share when I've experienced imposter syndrome. And while I do share and teach this and coach around it now, there are times where I still, as a CEO, say, am I cut out for this? And I have to have the resources and tools. And again, like you shared, right, years of experience have now guided me to sort of deflect or shield those thoughts off. But when I was a buyer, no secret, I've worked at Macy's. I worked at Macy's for a lot of years. I loved my job and I was a buyer and I was doing, I think, great work. Depends on which boss you ask, but I always made my sales and margin and I always had brilliant relationships with the marketplace. And I remember I was in the coat job, I was in the women's coat job, big job, triple digit, $1 million businesses, and took my CEO, Jeff Gannett, into the marketplace. And I had a great day. I had a great day. I looked up to Jeff. Jeff was a gay man. I was a gay man. He had a daughter. I now have a daughter. There were so many things that he paved the way for. So I give him a lot of respect in that context. We came back, and within a couple of days, I had to travel out to the West Coast, and I was with vendors, and I got a phone call from my boss, and the phone call went like this: Jeff wants you to interview for this job. It's the vice president of fashion. Pretty significant promotion. And
Mm.
I said, I'm not interested. No. And I didn't think that was my career path. Let me say it differently. I didn't think I was cut out to be a fashion director. I didn't think that that was my next step. That was a
Mm.
version of imposter syndrome. Saturday morning, I woke up. I was now back in town. I'm sitting at a brunch with a former assistant buyer who's now a colleague. And he says to me, excuse my language for those on the call, please forgive me. But he literally said, are you fucking kidding me? The CEO just asked you to take this job and you said no? And I thought about it for a second and I said, my fear is getting in the way, imposter syndrome. I called back my boss. I interviewed for the job. I got the job, but it gets better. 5 days later, I get the job. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the fashion office, no longer in the buying office, and I'm sitting there with a Mac. I've had a PC for the last 8 years, 7 years.
I'd be crippled.
Yeah, that's what happened, right? I'm sitting in this office by myself versus running a fairly large team. And I am sitting and it's a new position. I don't have my assistant yet. I'm sitting with this laptop and I'm going, what do I do next? And that's where the mindset starts to shift. What I learned in that moment was, well, what can you work on? What is in front of you? So, quite frankly, I Googled how to use a Mac. And that day, I wasn't a fashion director. I was a student of how to use my Mac. And so part of the mind shift is what tools do you need? But I would be lying to you if I didn't say there were moments in that first year or two or three. And I continued to have different jobs. They continued to promote. And I was very fortunate that I think I delivered, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten promoted. And so, but with each job, it was that feeling of like, oh shit, what do I do next? This is common. This is human. The
Hmm.
question is what do you do with those thoughts? How do you pivot your energy into what's possible? So you build your game plan. This is no different than any other to-do list or any other activity. So I wanted to share that story with the audience because that's a real story for me. That's
I
what
love
really
it.
happened.
I
I
love it.
mean,
I don't know the dynamics, but I'm kind of surprised that you shunned that position, but you weren't feeling it being your purpose. And guess what? They gave you a new tool. To some, the Mac is that's they're like their right arm, no big deal. It was a different tool for you. You had to learn that tool. And even in your story, I feel memories come back for me after many decades working in a broadcast company, super successful, time for a change. Someone hired me who I know very well for a new position. And I mean, it was all new. I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now I'm in rush hour traffic driving to this job. I didn't even know what the job really was. I had to kind of make it up as I went along. And there were many times sitting in an office where I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing here?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
kind of started walking around and identifying things. He had built a major website. He kind of got hosed on it because he trusted people. And I lifted the hood and said, we have problems here. We have major issues.
Yeah, close
Like,
the hood.
right. Yeah. How you need to fix this. Long story short, I got him on The View and some other big shows, and the website crashed. They weren't ready. But past that, I really didn't have a role. It didn't feel right for me. I needed it at the time because I was in between jobs, but I wasn't really an imposter, but I wasn't. I guess that's another view of this too. I felt like an imposter because I didn't know what my role was. It wasn't defined. Not my job
Oh,
to define the role. And I was qualified for a lot that I did, but I didn't know what the definition was. I'm just
well,
thinking
what
this
you're
out
talking
now.
about, I love that you said this though, because this is another aspect to imposter syndrome is this idea of clear job expectations. Do you know what's expected of you?
Right.
If the goalpost keeps changing, then you also don't have the confidence to lean in. And so you asked like why was I apprehensive? I was apprehensive because I wasn't clear yet on what the full expectations were. Not
Wow.
because my boss wasn't clear, but because the words didn't make sense to me. I had to learn. I had to think differently. I want to talk
Wow.
about one more thing if I have a few extra minutes, which is this idea of expectations around mentorship and sponsorship. Steve, have you ever had somebody in your career that served as a true mentor for you?
Um, yes, depending on how you look at it, but this person helped me get my very first job in radio, which by the way was this week, many decades ago. And they took my hands because I had no confidence at age 17, and that would be a true mentor. There was others along the way, but he was the one that, you know, he literally took a tape that I mixed out of my coat pocket, submitted it, and got the job for me. I had no confidence. I can do that.
I'm of the age where I actually know exactly when you say tape what that means. So
Right. Yeah. Yes. They didn't have CDs back then.
well, it's so I love what you just did. I had a boss who's a dear friend of mine now. But she took me aside and she was like, I want to provide for you some different aspects of mentorship versus sponsorship. What do you want to learn? And I said, well, I have never had experience in cosmetics. I had a lot of experience in retail, but I didn't have that experience. And she said, I'm going to put you with this wonderful woman named Muriel Gonzalez, honoring mentors, honoring sponsors. I met with Muriel only a couple times, but the word I would use is like in awe. This woman just really understood the world of beauty in a way that was deep and rich. She just really understood. And I found myself asking her the most bizarre questions because of my curiosity. Mentorship. If we define mentorship for the listeners on the call today, if we think about mentorship, mentorship is seeking somebody out that has tools in their toolbox that are sharp, and you are looking to sharpen those tools. Mentorship, right? It can
Yeah.
be reverse mentorship, it can be symbiotic mentorship, it can be peer-to-peer mentorship, but you have something as a tool that I think I'll need in my future. How do I learn from that? What I love that you described, Steve, is it was on that cusp of sponsorship. Sponsorship is the
Mm.
woman that said, what do you need to be successful next? It's that hand that you reach out or reach behind you and you hold the hand of the person and you guide them. Sponsorship is when you're in the room and they're not with you, you're speaking on their behalf. You're talking advocacy about their strengths, what they add in terms of value. You're promoting them. I don't mean that in terms of title. I mean that in terms of promotion, right? You are actually singing the tools that they bring to each and every occasion best. And it's really critical that leaders, colleagues, managers, fill in the gap on what that word is, but all folks within organizations stop and think, even for those CEOs who are out there, CEOs who say to me, I don't need a mentor, I don't need a sponsor. I'm like, bullshit.
Mm,
Where is the chair of the board? Where are
yeah.
your fellow CEOs? Where are your CFOs? Everybody needs someone.
You know what that
So,
means? That is somebody who lacks confidence in asking somebody else. They're afraid to show that person that they,
that's right.
I got it all together. No, we don't. None of us do. So,
None
and
of us do.
and when you ask somebody to help you, you're also helping them because it makes them feel good. So never be afraid to ask. Can't hurt to just ask somebody. If they're busy, they'll let you know, and you'll feel the genuineness. Great conversation today. This is one of those things nobody talks about because they don't want anybody to know that they don't feel confident in their role. This is what you and your team help people with, and especially with Arrive, Drive, and Thrive, your book. All the details on SatermanConnect.com, SaterMan.com. Josh, always great talking with you. Like you bring things out, like
Thank
these
you.
memories that like start flooding in my mind. And it's like we all go through this is what I realized today. We all go through the same types of things. What you talked about with the Macy's job, the cosmetics role, you could take that and spin that into somebody else's life or situation. Yes, it's different, but it's still the same. We're all the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I love that. Great conversation. I can't wait for our conversation next.
Same. Appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.